There are 5 layers to understanding Gemini deeply and completely using ancient esoteric knowledge and wisdom. In this video, I'm going to break that down for you. My name is Aleena and welcome to Prometheus Astrology. The first layer of understanding Gemini is to understand its planetary ruler, which is Mercury. So Mercury you can think of as like the king of Gemini. Ancient astrologers understood the zodiac to be like its own world. So the zodiac is like the sky world, and it has these 12 different kingdoms that are the different zodiac signs. So the planets then were like the gods or the kings of these different regions. So Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, and the leader, the king, the god in charge of this region basically gives that whole region its character, right? Culture is set from the top down. So Mercury, who is Mercury? Mercury is the trickster, as is Gemini. Mercury is lord of communication. Another archetype for Gemini is the messenger. Mercury also governs over things like numbers and letters. It's all of this kind of left brain analytical thinking stuff, the way that we break things down into black and white, understand them kind of rationally, logically, using reason. That sort of mental facility, that left brain thinking is Mercury. Mercury also governs things like astrology, astronomy, mathematics, also dream interpretation, writing, speaking, anything with the voice, also working with the hands, your kind of technical ability and skill, your ability to literally break things apart and put them together with your hands, understanding how things work, building things, craftiness. Gemini tends to have lots of hobbies, lots of interests, is really good at doing lots of stuff, can learn things really quickly. You could think of Mercury also as just anything that's kind of related to tools, understanding tools. Sometimes this can be technology as well. Mercury is also very much the chameleon. It is Hermes in the Greek pantheon, coyote in Native American spirituality you could think of. In Egyptian mythology, Mercury is Thoth. So all of these different gods have this very tricky nature of being this and that, where there's this ability to adapt to the situation. Mercury is the only planet that is neither masculine nor feminine, the only planet that is neither benefic nor malefic. So Mercury has a nature that can be quite positive and constructive and supportive. You can think of like knowledge and thinking and rationality, and also a sign that is quite destructive. So the more malefic nature of Mercury would be relating to things like stealing or lying or using communication and business to kind of further your own efforts or manipulate reality to suit your purposes. This is kind of the malefic nature of Mercury, and it can depend on the Gemini placements, the Mercury placements, and how this looks in someone, and when we talk about starting to predict the nature of things and people. So Gemini is brainy, and this is also related to being an air sign. So this is the second layer of understanding Gemini in this ancient context. We must understand that Gemini is an air sign. And I do have an entire video dedicated to understanding air and the air signs, and also a whole video deep diving into Mercury, which I do recommend that you check out if you want to really get to the bottom of this. This is kind of like a brief overview, but I have much longer videos getting into each of these core concepts if you want to check it out. So air is all about the intellect, the mind stuff. Air is quite social and quite playful. And so Gemini's intelligence, Mercury, this left brain thinking, is very much related to being social and having the social intelligence. Can also just be kind of mathy, brainy, sciencey as well. Air can kind of be related to either of those technical things or those more social, playful things. And air jives really well with Mercury. Mercury is already left brain thinking, and then air is also into that kind of left brain thinking. Air can also be a little bit cold. That's how the ancients described it, cold and dry. And we can think of this as Gemini's nature in terms of sometimes Gemini can be a little bit distant. Air is not so interested in the emotions or the feelings. Air just wants to have a good time, to talk about things, have fun, think about stuff. It doesn't have to necessarily mean anything. We're just enjoying playing around with different ideas, different possibilities. The third layer of understanding Gemini is to understand that it is a mutable sign. This is the quadruplicity. So Gemini is mutable air ruled by Mercury. And there are 2 signs ruled by Mercury. There's Virgo and Gemini. So Virgo is going to be the mutable earth version of Mercury. So Virgo is much more oriented towards the real world and practical things that make sense, and is very much like, how can I help you get this together? How can I get myself together? What are the tasks? What are my to-do list? How do I keep this clean and tidy? Things in the real world and organizing the real world and using its intelligence to navigate our earthly reality. Gemini is much more interested as a mutable air sign in just thinking about stuff. It doesn't have to necessarily mean anything or do anything or become anything. It's just fun to think about stuff. And then as the mutable nature then, so mutable is indicating that the sign is at the end of a season. So this is the time between seasons, right? We're changing from one season to another, this mutable, changeable nature. So Mercury is already quite adaptable, go with the flow, fluid, and then air is also the fastest moving, lightest element, just all over the place. And then to be mutable on top of it all, this adaptable, changeable, go with the flow, able to adapt to different situations, just makes Gemini kind of the most chaotic sign in the zodiac, in a sense, where it just really can be anything, can do anything, wants to be everywhere and do everything, generally wants to try everything, can just really adapt to any situation. And this can be really challenging for Geminis sometimes because they are so talented and so skilled and so smart, and they can learn so quickly and adapt so quickly to any situation, anything they need to do. So it can be difficult sometimes for Gemini to really figure out, well, who am I underneath of all this? What do I actually want? That might be a question that can be really hard for Gemini, because it's like, well, I could do this and I could do that, and this is fun and that is fun and I like doing this, but this makes more sense. And Gemini, it can be harder to find that core essence of self because it's just able to really be anything for anyone. And this can be difficult for other people as well who are lovers of Geminis, who might be wondering, well, you said that you felt this way, but now you're saying that you feel this way. So I don't really know who you actually are or what's real for you because it keeps changing, and this makes me a little bit insecure. So that can be kind of an issue for sometimes with Geminis in relationships as well. And their way of communicating as kind of the masters of communication, the most language-oriented sign potentially as well. If it's a little bit more malefic, or even if it's not very malefic, Gemini is just very good at articulating reality in the way that they understand it. And so sometimes they might not have the forethought to clarify that they're articulating things in the way that they understand it, and they might just state things in a way that sounds like the reality of the situation when it's actually really the way that they understood it, and restating things in ways that maybe are not exactly reflective of the objective reality, and kind of can have trouble sometimes even discerning that they are kind of manipulating reality because it's just so second nature for them to describe things in this way. And not all Geminis. Okay, this is just some things that come up sometimes. This isn't like universal. We don't want to paint too broad of a stroke here, but just any piece of this can sometimes apply to some people. So take or leave it. The next and fourth component to understanding Gemini deeply and completely is to look at its symbol. So Gemini is the twins. The symbol, the little glyph, is like the number 2 almost. So this has to do with the way that Mercury too is interested in breaking things down, kind of like the black and white thinking, zeros and ones. So Gemini is very good at breaking things down and analyzing things. This is also kind of the nature of being both this and that. So opposite to Gemini in the zodiac is Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter ruled signs are always opposite to Mercury ruled signs. Jupiter and Mercury have opposite nature. So Jupiter as a function kind of serves to confirm and affirm things. Jupiter's kind of about belief, ideology, kind of really that firm conviction, whereas Mercury is very much interested in looking at both sides. This is the twins, this is the dual nature of Gemini. So Gemini, could understand why you have this moral ideology that you do and how that makes sense. And Mercury is probably going to be interested in looking at the other side of things too. Gemini is not so interested in making value judgments and basing belief systems off of ideology and morality. Gemini is more interested in what is the most logical and rational and what makes sense. So you could say, this is the right thing to do. And that might not be very persuasive to a Gemini because they just don't really think about things like that. They can always see both sides of things. And this is, again, that nature of being able to come off one way and then also come off the opposite way. And this is also related to Mercury and being mutable, of just really being able to adapt to situations. So you might see a Gemini in this context be like this, and then in a different context be completely different from that. And that is just part of this nature of being the twins and really holding both. And so another way this shows up with Gemini sometimes is that usually people associate Gemini with being very extroverted, kind of life of the party, socialite, getting around, buzzing, a little bit crazy all over the place, chatting it up, being out in the world. But also Gemini tends to, on the flip side of that, need their own time to be kind of introverted and more alone and inward. And that can be something that people kind of miss about Geminis sometimes, that this is also the nature of being air and just like a little bit colder in a sense, where you do also need space and kind of time to be alone from time to time. So there is also that duality that is encapsulated in the Gemini nature as well. And then the fifth layer of understanding Gemini through this ancient esoteric system is to understand the seasonal component. So the seasonal component is important because we're using the tropical zodiac here as Hellenistic astrology. This aligns the zodiac signs with the equinoxes and solstices rather than with the actual constellations, which would be using the sidereal zodiac. So if you use the tropical zodiac, then the seasonal component is actually really important to understanding the nature. So Gemini is the last trimester of spring. This is the transition between spring and summer. And this is a time of just buzzing excitement. This is kind of the end of school. We're getting ready to go out there and play. It's like almost the end. We're finalizing all of our plans, taking our tests, and then we're going to go be free. And you're just kind of buzzing. You can't wait for summer, and that kind of like electric energy of just like, there's so much to do. I want to do so much, so many fun things to do. That is Gemini's nature as well. And then bonus here, one more thing that you could think about with Gemini is the body part. So each zodiac sign also rules a body part. And for Gemini, that is the hands. So Gemini is also kind of the arms and the shoulders and things like that. And this is related to almost communication in a way as well. You can think of the way that we really articulate and gesticulate with our hands as we communicate, and also that craftiness, that skill of breaking things apart and putting them together. The hands are kind of the magic also, like how if you were a witch or a wizard, you cast spells with your hands. So this is the nature of Gemini, and having that kind of mastery over reality and business and just constructing things through reason and science and all this stuff. So that's kind of the body part that's associated with Gemini as well. So then to break it down into the sun, moon, and rising, the sun sign now, Gemini Sun. So we can make predictions about the personality given the placements of the planets in each person's zodiac, and thinking about the planets as the psychological function that they correspond to. So the sun is the ego, the persona, also the light you shine into the world, the way that you're known, especially if you're born during the day. So Gemini Sun, this is going to be the mind. So a Gemini Sun is probably going to be thinking a lot, having lots of thoughts, lots of ideas, lots of hobbies, lots of interests, interested in all sorts of stuff, like to know everything, like to do lots of stuff. Also, they might be known for being kind of all over the place, like energetic, a little chaotic, a little crazy, a little wild. This is kind of the nature of a Gemini Sun. This is how people know you, that your persona, your ego is to be probably pretty smart, little smarty pants, to be really crafty, really talented, good at lots of stuff, all over the place, a socialite, very good at speaking, all of that, navigating the social world. Also quite playful. Air is very playful. So is Gemini. Likes to make jokes. Mercury also rules over humor. And so Geminis tend to be really funny. And this is part of the social charm that they have as well. And the Gemini sun as well. So the sun can represent the literal father. So sometimes a Gemini sun, or also qualities inherited from the father, might have a father who was pretty brainy, maybe a little eccentric, a little all over the place, maybe a little bit cold emotionally, a little bit. Air signs, again, not the warmest on an interpersonal level, or kind of a playful, goofy dad. maybe sometimes. And then for a Gemini moon, so the moon is the subconscious, also the body and the emotions, also qualities inherited from the mother or the literal mother. So a Gemini moon, Obama has a Gemini moon. This can be people who are extremely articulate and able to really speak from a place of feeling with that moon emotional stuff. The Gemini moons just, they really get to the heart of things and really make you feel through their words. Very, very talented orators oftentimes. The moon as the physical body too, this can be sometimes a body intelligence, having great dexterity in the body, really being able to kind of intuit the needs of the body, like having some kind of body intelligence. Although at the same time, when you have an air moon, air being more like rational and reason and all of these things, the moon being the body and also the moon relating to the feelings, sometimes air moons have a harder time actually really feeling their feelings and embodying that. They might be more likely to intellectualize the feelings. They might have a very strong system and framework for understanding feelings. They might be really into psychology, for instance. But then when it comes to actually processing the feelings and moving through it and being with it on that somatic felt level, that might be a little bit more challenging for a Gemini moon. Then the moon as the mother. So the Gemini moon people might have had a very brainy, very smart, very playful, very all over the place, very crafty mother or something like that, or kind of inherited those qualities from her potentially. Or it could be like a little bit distant. Again, the coldness sometimes can come through with Gemini being an air sign. So maybe a little bit cold, a little bit distant mother, but who was probably quite adept at, getting things done, very capable, very smart, but maybe not so emotionally present there as the mother. A Gemini moon might also have a more embodied sense of humor as well, kind of like making jokes through dances or making funny little movements or something like that. Then a Gemini rising person, this is going to be the totality of who you are, mind, body, and soul. So it's going to be extremely important for you as Gemini rising to look at your Mercury sign. That's going to indicate the type of Gemini that you are and also the major purpose in life direction for you and what you're moving towards in this lifetime and kind of the archetype of who you are underneath it all. So it will be extremely important to look into that Mercury sign and what that means, because that is the planet that most encapsulates you. So the rising sign is really, really who you are, notwithstanding your culture. Again, sun from the father, moon from the mother, rising sign, the true you. So the sun sign changes every 4 weeks, moon sign changes every 2.5 days, the rising sign changes every 2 hours. So this is the most unique part of the chart for you and is really just the you of yous underneath it all, notwithstanding the time period you're born in, the culture, the acculturation, the parents, the family, anything. That is the real you. So you are the messenger, you are the communicator, you are the trickster, and probably have everything that I talked about, all of these qualities from the sun, moon, and rising and all of that general stuff. All of that is you. And so it can be really important and difficult sometimes for Gemini rising or any of these Gemini placements really to again discern who are you underneath of it all, because it's so easy for Gemini to be anything and anyone and do anything. So looking at that ruler of the ascendant, that'll be really helpful to know the kind of specific nature of you, the you of yous, and then also the house placement to kind of determine what area of life you're really focused on for this lifetime. So if you want to dig into that, I do have a free download on my website that I'll link below that has the meanings of each house in astrology. So therefore, if you were Gemini rising and you have Mercury in the 5th house, for instance, then maybe things like parties, pleasure, children, or sex, that could be the major direction and focus of your life. So it depends on the house placement. If you want to check that out, I'll link it below. Free thing that you can download to just learn more. I also have a Zodiac wheel if you want to see what all of the planetary rulers of each of the Zodiac signs are and their element and quadruplicity, all of that broken down visually in a super duper great Zodiac wheel that I made, also linked below, free to download. So feel free, have at it. And again, don't forget to check out those videos if you want to really take a deep dive into the mutable signs, Mercury as a planet, the air signs, all of that. Also linked below. And if you want to get more one-on-one personalized support, understanding who you are, what's going on in your life, how you can predict who you will become, what happens in your future, all of that, I would love to talk to you about it. So I'll put a link again below for you to look into readings with me if that sounds interesting to you. Would love to talk. Thank you so much for being here. Let me know in the comments if I missed anything or if this did or did not resonate. Please share with us your Gemini nature and what's going on for you. It'll help us understand. Geminis are not only mysteries to themselves, but also to other people. So we would all love to know. If you've got insight on what it means to be a Gemini, let us know. Thank you so much. Be well.